The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we've initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is Mobile First Responsive Design Approach. Our guest speaker today is Karpagam Balasubramaniam. She is a software engineer at eBay. Karpagam completed MSc Software Engineering from PSG College of Technologies, Coimbatore. Based on research done on college, she published a paper titled KS Ring Theoretical Approach for Matrix Multiplication in the Proceedings of ACM Digital Library and ICWET 2011 by presenting it in the International Conference on Emerging Technology, Trends in Technology. She is currently working for the C2C selling team, focusing on consumer selling methods for eBay. Her areas of interest include programming languages, networks, cryptography, and responsive design. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker today. Over to you, Karpagam.
Thank you, Deepika. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank everyone for joining this webinar. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming you all for today's webinar on mobile first approach for responsive or adaptive design. To start with, let me walk through the agenda for today's session. Introduction to the problem statement, how we can address this problem using either responsive web design or adaptive web design. Let's try to understand the difference between the both. Also, irrespective of either we choose responsive or adaptive web design for our project, how to make the web experience even more better by following mobile first approach for design and development, and also few other techniques that we can use that makes our web experience even more smoother for users. So let me put forth the problem statement. To give an introduction, we all know that the web landscape becomes increasingly complex. So it is becoming extremely important to deliver solid web experiences to growing number of contexts. Nowadays, users are using a wide range of devices, starting from mobiles, tablets, desktops, game consoles, TVs, and even wearables, and they are using them to surf the web. And this is growing at an astronomical pace. So let me go through the glimpse of few crazy statistics from MobiForge to understand the problem statement better. 25% of overall search queries are now on mobile devices. 85% of users expect page to load on mobile devices as faster than they load on desktops. 33% of tablet users are less likely to purchase online from a company if they experience poor website performance. But what is the problem here is, much of the web isn't optimized for all the available devices in the market now. So it is becoming extremely important to develop a site that can adapt to any screen size today or in the near future. So we have responsive web design and adaptive web design to our rescue. These two designs give web creators some tools for making layouts that respond to any screen size. We can make use of fluid grids, flexible images, and media queries to get the layout looking great regardless of the size of the devices the users are using or seeing the design in. But the problem is, nowadays both these designs are widely adhered to and presented as two options for web design without understanding the difference between the both. And the two designs are commonly confused. So before designers and developers start the project, it is always advisable to make all the stakeholders involved use the same terminology while implementing site. Also make them understand the key difference between responsive and adaptive web design, which will keep everyone on the same page and help us to select the best approach for the project that is needed. Let me explain about responsive web design first. What is responsive web design? True responsive design is fluid. So we can use CS3 media queries to respond to any screen size. We can make use of CS3 modules to create a flexible grid where text can wrap and images can shrink to adjust along with the browser. So let me show an example of a flexible grid so that we can quickly visualize what responsive design is. So as and when we resize the browser, the same HTML file responds differently as per the screen size. So this is basically responsive web design. Adaptive web design, on the other hand, uses a series of static layouts based on breakpoints. To quote an example here to understand it better, a developer can develop a web page for 3 different sizes. Say from 0 pixel to 320 pixel, we have a different design. From 321 pixels to 760 pixels, we can have a different design. From 761 to 960 pixels, we can have different design. So this is basically adaptive web design. So let me show a pictorial representation so that we can get the feel of what is adaptive layout. So here we are having different designs. It's not the same HTML file or JSP file that is responding as per browser size. Here we are calling different JSPs or HTML files as per the browser size. So to understand the difference between responsive and adaptive web design, in responsive web design we make the HTML files respond when we adjust a browser window. But in adaptive web design, we make the adaptive files to load instead of making them respond. So in adaptive design, what exactly happens is it detects the device and calls up the properly sized layout to view. So it is the responsibility of designers and developers to make this point understandable by all the stakeholders of the project and choose better choice for the particular project. So responsive fluid design may give user an optimal experience because it will respond to any screen size we provide. So this might be for a project where we are aiming to provide optimal experience for users. But here we may have less control over how everything looks if we are taking a fluid approach by using percentage-based scaling. But we have media queries to our rescue. We can use media queries to open up a range of possibilities for layout as mentioned earlier. Adaptive design may work better for projects with clients having less budget. So it can also be used for projects with lot of images that won't scale well. So it is the responsibility of designers to come up with the appropriate design for the particular project. So once we decide upon the design that we are going to use, we can start with mobile first approach for either of this approach design. So coming to mobile first approach, as mentioned earlier, mobile is not anymore the future market, it is the present potential market. Developing for mobile context is much more than developing web experience for smaller screens. Because nowadays users are having mobile devices with them wherever they go. So which unlocks entire new use cases for us. Having mobile phones with them consistently means that connectivity can be all over the board, ranging from strong Wi-Fi signals on the couch to 3G when out and about. In addition, we can make use of touchscreen capabilities to open new opportunities to interact directly with the content, and mobile ergonomics leading to different considerations when designing layout and functionality. So in order to create a site that's truly designed for mobile context and not just for smaller screen size, we want to ensure that we tackle the many challenges of mobile development upfront. The constraints of the mobile context force us to focus on what is essential and how to present the content as quickly as possible. So this will definitely help us to build fast-loading, optimized experiences mobile first, which will definitely have a trickle-down effect for tablet, desktop, and other emerging contexts as we proceed further. So irrespective of whether we take responsive design or adaptive design for a project, it's always good to start with mobile first design and development. Okay. The reason for saying so is, in mobile first approach, the designers are forced to focus on what is truly important to a product or service. Re-evaluation of what content or functionality is necessary gives us an opportunity to strip away the crust across the board. And also these constraints encourages us to focus on ease of use, speed, intuitiveness as essential ingredients to a good user experience. Definitely this mental shift in design strategy made designers wireframing, photoshopping, prototyping and presenting on small screens first. Establishing how core experience fleshed out on small screens can translate up to large screens as we move further. And this can be more logical than to crump or squeeze large screen experience onto small screens. So proceeding with development, it always makes sense to author a lightweight semantic code foundation first, and then progressively enhance the experience from there. So this is the key difference between mobile first approach and mobile last approach. So what we do in mobile first approach, we'll try to concentrate on what content or functionality is essential for the project, and we'll try to come up with the lean solution possible, and also not only lean but impressive solution possible for mobile. And from there we can develop it for other devices as we move on. But what we actually do in mobile last is we try to use or try to take advantage of everything the desktop platform offers us. But the problem here is we may build an amazing product that leverages lot of great technologies for desktop version. But how well can it scale down to mobile? That is a very big question mark. So most of the designers and developers in market today, what they are doing is they are starting with developing experience for desktop first, and then they are trying to move for other smaller screens, which is definitely not healthy. So it is always good to progressively enhance than gracefully degrade. So in progressive enhancement workflow, we are starting with a project that is both super lean and quite impressive. Because here we are already addressing the problem of trimming down the content to its most vital elements. When it's time to bring this design to the desktop or other large screens, instead of deciding on what to cut and how to water down the product, we can instead focus on how to make it even more robust. This is the baseline for mobile first approach. So now we have understood what is mobile first approach, what is the difference between responsive and adaptive design. So now let's concentrate on how to come up with the structure, style and behavior for mobile first design. So how to come up with the structure for mobile first design? In mobile first design, instead of including large or heavy modules by default, and making them hide or disabling them for small screens later. Instead of doing this, what we are going to do is we are going to come up with mobile first foundation, which makes it possible to introduce large screen appropriate elements later, while still providing a fully accessible experience for smaller screens. So, authoring a structured content first means authoring a core foundation that prioritizes clarity, semantics, and performance. So, by coming up with mobile first foundation, we are enabling designers to introduce large screen appropriate elements later. This will definitely have impact on the performance of the site for smaller screens as well. So the key component to understand here is the semantic market, which most of the designers are not following now. It's always good to have the lean semantic HTML market because it will allow us to keep the responsive experience manageable and accessible. Semantic markup tags as part of HTML5 are extremely portable and can be accessed by many devices regardless of feature set or capability. Let me quote an example here. HTML standards nowadays discourage the use of italics tag, and they prefer using accurate tags such as emphasis. So once we provide emphasis, then how we can achieve the style of italics here? That's the question mark. So we can use CSS style sheet to specify whether the emphasis is for italic or for bold or for underline. So this will definitely help us to understand the semantics of the structure. So it is always encouraged to use these HTML5 semantic elements to define different parts of a web page. So let me quote some of the HTML5 semantic elements like figure, section, summary, time, article, footer, header, which most of the HTML pages or JSP pages now are not having. And it is always good to have the semantic structure defined for the web pages. So once this is done, the next thing we have to concentrate is setting the viewport. Modern browsers by default set the viewport to larger browser, which allows for better viewing of non-mobile optimized sites. This means that if your site is not optimized for mobile devices, the mobile browsers by default setting the viewport to large screen. So when user wants to view a particular content in that website, what he has to do is he has to zoom in to get the content what he wants. But it is always advisable to optimize the experience for mobile devices. So it is always advisable to set the viewport. So we can use the meta tag here and set the viewport. And here is an example to show how we can set the viewport. To move further, let me explain what content fragments are. So as we mentioned earlier, we can load heavy modules or modules that are needed for large screen experiences only later and avoid them as default for small screen experiences. So what we can do is we can come up with separate JSPs or HTML files and load them when the user requests for it or when the resolution reaches a certain breakpoint. This will definitely improve the performance for lightweight experience. And one more thing, this helps to reduce the page size down and thereby improving the passive load time for smaller devices. So some of the techniques that can be used for better experience are, we can make use of HTML special characters like star with stars, empty stars instead of images. So special characters for simple shapes will definitely reduce number of HTTP requests. Also, we can make use of tell URI scheme, which is an effective technique to support phone call to customer service number. So when we start with mobile first approach, what we are trying to do is we are trying to take maximum advantage of mobile capabilities. So we are providing features that are mobile friendly, and thereby we are trying to move for larger screens and incorporate these techniques in larger screens as well. So if we use tell URI scheme for mobile devices, then we can use voice over IP schemes for larger screens when we move to desktop version design or tablet version design. So that's all about the structure for mobile first approach. So let me start with style for mobile first approach. When crafting our CSS, we'll do everything in our power to keep things lightweight and as fluid as possible. We understand that all these devices have many different screen sizes and that tomorrow's devices won't have the same resolution as today's. Because screen size is an unknown factor, we can make use of content itself to determine how the layout should adjust to different containers. So what we can do, as I mentioned, we can develop separate content fragments for the larger and smaller screens. We can also come up with separate style sheets for larger and smaller screens. And we can make use of link tag to link the according style sheet as per the screen size. So we can make use of link tag along with media element, and we can mention the screen size as part of the media element. So other parts are also there. In order to keep the code simpler, smaller and more maintainable, we can define mobile first styles on top, and if we want to change the stylings for larger screens, then we can add it at the bottom. Let me explain with the example why I am saying so. If we are doing mobile last approach, that is, if we are developing sites for desktops first and then we are going to squeeze their experience for mobile devices, this is what we are going to do. So if there is a div called product image and we want to set the width as 50% and slope left for this particular div, for mobile, for desktop version, what we'll do is we'll set the width as 55% and float as left. But when we move to smaller screens, definitely this will not help. So for smaller screens, what we are going to do is we are going to set the width as auto and float as none, because we want the image in the center position. So how we can do it? So this is how the style looks for mobile first approach. So we can set the width as 50% and float as left and leave it there alone. With this example itself, we can understand how many lines of code we are avoiding when we take mobile first approach. To continue with, let me explain about applying media queries. So as we mentioned earlier, for adaptive design, we'll come up with different breakpoints and we'll develop sites for different breakpoints. So here what we are doing is we are making use of mobile first style when we apply media queries as well. So we can make the default styles as mobile first styles, and from there on we can add styles for other screens. So the major advantage here is we are not modifying any of the existing styles. We are just adding styles for larger screens. That is one of the biggest advantages. So when we want to display 3 images per row for medium displays like mobile phones in landscape or smaller tablets, we can display media query like at media screen and min width equal to 480 pixels, and we can give the width as 33%. And when we want to display 6 in a row for large displays like medium tablets or desktops, small desktops, large desktops, we can give related products and the list as an element with width 16%. So here we can avoid giving float equal to none for smaller devices. This will definitely reduce this one line of code. And also we are just modifying the width for different screen sizes. So what are the advantages by making styles for smaller screens default? The major advantage is some of the mobile browsers like Symbian browsers, BlackBerry browsers, they don't understand media queries. So if we have a media query for mobile screens separately, then these browsers may miss that. And they may give a feel that is totally irrelevant to what we might have developed. So by having small screen styles as default, we are supporting more platforms. And it also makes it easy to add more breakpoints without having to modify any of the existing styles. Defining styles as they are needed, what is the biggest advantage? What are the biggest advantage of these? It keeps the file size down and it reduces the complexity and it keeps the code much more maintainable. So we have seen how to apply media queries as part of styles, and also we have seen how to have separate CSS files for larger and smaller screens. Or actually some of the browsers like IE8, they don't understand media queries. So what we can do is we can have a separate style sheet for IE8. So these are the topics that are covered under styles. Now let's move to using relative units. So it's always good to use percentage and EM units in our design in order to keep things as flexible as possible. The biggest advantage of relative units are they are far more compatible with tremendous variance brought on by screen size, pixel density, and zoom level. We all know that media queries are responsive web design secret sauce, and we want to develop a fluid grid that makes most of the work instead of the CSS styles. So we can make use of ENHANCEMENT formula which says target divided by context equal to result. So to make it even more simpler, let me go to the previous example where we see that for mobile experience we are displaying two images. So the target is 100. That is 100% divided by 2 image gives 50%. So that is the result. And for mobile phones in landscape and smaller tablets, our target is 100%, but we want to display 3. So the context is 3. So 100 divided by 3 gives 33%, which is our result. And to develop 6 images in a row for larger displays like small desktops and large desktops, again target is 100 divided by 6, which is the context. It gives 16. So it's always good to use these percentage and EM units because of the advantage they provide over tremendous variance brought on by screen size, pixel density, and zoom level. Moving on, how we can reduce HTTP requests by using CSS styles. Definitely, we all know that too many HTTP requests can be a huge killer for performance, especially on mobile. So we can incorporate some of CSS techniques that are available to save HTTP requests to servers. And this will definitely help us in improving the site performance. Okay, let's see how we can do that. We can make use of CSS gradients instead of background images. This will definitely help us reduce the amount of image requests, as well as it gives us more control over the design. So if the background image is very simple and if we can achieve it through CSS gradients, then we can use CSS styles instead of including it as an image. Also, we can make use of data URI'S. Data URI'S instead of image messages for smaller icons. So if we feel that if we want to reduce as much of HTTP requests as possible, then we can definitely leverage data URI'S. So let me put forth what is the advantage and disadvantage of data URIs, and the designers can take call on whether to go with data URIs or use images instead. The main advantage is reducing number of requests, which results in a faster perceived load time, which is already mentioned earlier. But the negative part here is the CSS may look a bit ugly, and the screen and the size of the CSS file might increase. So here is the example of data URL for background image. So here what we are doing is we are giving the image content directly. So we can definitely give image content directly if the image is smaller image. So wherever we are seeing that we are including image for smaller content, then definitely we can include it as part of CSS style sheet itself, instead of including it as a image and making HTTP request. So now we have seen how we can make a structure and style for mobile first approach. So we have both a structure and style in place for mobile first approach. The next thing we have to concentrate is the behavior. And we all know how JavaScript is there to our rescue again. So what we can do is we can add JavaScript enhancements to add more functionality to navigation, image gallery, and auxiliary content. Let me quote an example with navigation here. So we can have a resize listener, which will determine whether there is enough room to show the navigation and search bar. If the listener says there is enough space, then we will show the navigation and search bar. Otherwise, we will hide it. On hover, we may show the navigation and the search bar. So we can have a nav anchor, and it can be used to toggle the visibility of navigation and search bar for small screens. So the example goes here like this. We are having a nav anchor, and it has menu and search option. So we have a menu bar and a search bar. So we have a listener, JavaScript listener called resize, which will actually find the client width and height, and it will check whether it is mobile. So SW will capture client width and H will capture height, and we are calling the check mobile function. So here we are checking whether it is greater than the breakpoint. If it is greater than the breakpoint, so the breakpoint carries the mobile breakpoint that we have decided, and it returns true or false. So based on which we will either show or hide the search bar. So we can have more functionalities added to the structure and style by having behaviors included by Java. So the key takeaways from this session are we have to make all our stakeholders understand what is the difference between responsive and adaptive design. Because most of the time during development phase, people might think that we are doing adaptive design and they may design it in such a way, but the developer might be doing responsive design. So in order to tackle all this problem, it is better to make everyone understand what is the difference between the both, and make it clear that we are going to use one term for the design. And also it is important to make sure that designers are authoring semantic HTML markup as a foundation for adaptive or responsive experience. And also it is better to make our CSS, or if we have already completed the site and if we want to move it to mobile first approach, what we can do is we can make all the mobile first styles as default style, and we can try to cut down the unnecessary ones or the redundant ones and make the file more lightweight, simple and maintainable. And it's always good to use relative units like EMs and percentages to keep the size as fluid and flexible as possible. And we have already seen that the screen size and the resolution, everything is going to change in the future. So it is always good to depend on the content to determine the breakpoints for media queries. And we have to exploit opportunities to reduce HTTP requests by conditionally loading content and using HTML characters, CSS gradients, data URI'S, and more. And it's always good to author unobstructed to JavaScript. So what we are doing in mobile first design is we are using the initial time we have on concentrating on mobile-centric features like touch events, telephone links, and geolocation to deliver rich experience to mobile users. Since mobile is the present potential market, it will definitely help us achieve more than what we expect from following mobile first approach. So some of the live examples we have are Google and Instagram, who took mobile first approach and have clearly witnessed the benefits out of it. So that by adhering to the principle of progressive enhancement and addressing constraints first, we are laying a future-friendly foundation that gives our site a better chance of working in future browsers and environments. So let's follow the principles of progressive enhancement and address the constraints of mobile first, which will definitely help us design, develop, and deliver at once for any screen sizes, browsers, or environment. Thank you so much. I hereby close the session on mobile first approach for responsive or adaptive design. I hope that this session was useful to you guys.
Thank you, Karpagam, for this insightful presentation. I would request you to quickly take up the questions now. Please read out the questions and their answers so that all our listeners may listen to your commendable insights.
Sure. Sure, Deepa. Okay, there is this question by Dipankar Ghosh. Let me read out the question first before answering it. Why responsive is preferred over adaptive? Which one you think is better to use? So as I mentioned earlier, when we choose responsive design, we have to make it truly fluid, which means that even if we found some other device in future, a responsive design should look perfectly fine in the device. So developing truly responsive design is really difficult because we have to come up with fluid grids which will not only address all the screens that are there in present, but it should be able to adapt to or respond to screens that may come in future as well. But once we are able to do it, definitely responsive is preferred, because in adaptive design what we are trying to do is we are trying to coming up with so many breakpoints, and we are developing different designs for each of these breakpoints. So this is, as I mentioned earlier, in adaptive design we are not making the HTML file or JSP file to respond. We are just loading the appropriate file and showing to the user. So this may be a little bit difficult to scale, because in future if we have a new device, if we have a new screen size, then if that particular screen size is not addressed in the previous development, then we have to definitely take up some time to design and develop for the new device. So that is why responsive design is preferred over adaptive design, because of the scalability that the responsive design provides. But developing truly responsive site is really, really difficult. It may take some time initially, but once we are done with it, definitely it will help us to address all the screen sizes that may come in the future, not only the screen sizes that we have now. Hope that answers your question. Let me read out the next question. Shall we use font or some icons instead of URI characters? So the question here is, can we use font or some icons instead of URI characters? So the idea of using URI characters is to reduce the HTTP request. So if we make use of URI characters, we can definitely help to reduce the HTTP request. If we use icons again, then definitely it will, I think it will not help in reducing HTTP request. So there is one more thing from Vikramadityan. I clearly understand mobile last approach is mobile last approach. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and experience. That's okay. I have one more question. If the requirement doesn't fit in responsive design, in what way it will affect the mobile compatibility? That's by Ravi Shankar. See, if the requirement doesn't fit in responsive design, in what way it will affect the mobile compatibility? It will not affect the mobile compatibility as such. But the thing is, if the client feels that it's enough if we develop for mobile screen and tablet screen and desktop screen, which means that we are going to develop 3 different designs for these 3 different screens. If the client feels that the time and the resources that we are, having now will not help us concentrate on responsive design now, and if he feels that he has low budget also and he wants the product in very short span of time, then we can go with responsive design. We can come up with mobile first approach. We can go with adaptive design and we can use mobile first approach and come up with a very good experience for mobile devices. What are the devices the client gives? We can come up with definitely a good experience if we follow mobile first design. I hope that answers your question. Let me read out the next question. How can we differentiate max width and min width? Suppose we done with max width 760 pixels, then what's the use of writing max width 480 pixels? This is by Bhavani Shankar. Okay. So min width means that the minimum width the screen size might have. So if we say from min width 280 pixels to max width 320 pixels, it means that screens which is having a screen size 280 pixels, 2 screens which is having which are having 320 pixels. So it will be mostly 320 to 280 to 320. It will be small screens, which is mobile portrait. So from 321 pixels to 480 pixels, it could be mobile landscape. So we should understand these breakpoints very clearly and develop the experiences. So the question goes like this: how we can differentiate max width and min width? Suppose we are done with max width 780 pixels, then what's the use of writing max width 480 pixels? So if we have written for max width 780 pixels, it means that starting from small screen till 780 pixels, which is the breakpoint for tablet, if we are writing size in such a way, this will not help, because definitely we will have an in-between breakpoint, say 320 pixels or 480 pixels, to address the mobile screen. So it is not good to have directly max width 760 pixels, because the content that we may show in mobile will definitely varies from what we are going to show in the tablet. So it's always good to have 0 pixels to 320 or till max with 320 pixels and 321 to 768 pixels and 769 to 980 pixels and from 981 to 1200 pixels. And if we want to have in between styles like from 320 to 480 pixels, which could be the landscape version of mobile, if we want to have a separate styling for this, then definitely we can have. And the next question is, adaptive design also includes responsiveness, isn't it? It's by Rupesh Jain. Actually, a few designers think that responsive design is subset of adaptive design, but it is not, because the thing is, in responsive design, what we are trying is we are making one design. We are having one structure and making it respond to different screen sizes or different breakpoints. But in case of adaptive design, the idea is totally different. What we are trying there is we are going to have a series of static layouts. So we are going to have different layouts and we are going to load these layouts based on the screen size. So it will be like a call to a particular layout based on the size of the screen. So definitely responsive design is not a part of adaptive design. And there is a request from Shrikant Hatwar to share the slides. If the slide would be shared in future, you will be able to find it in the link as well. And there is a question from Rakesh saying that, can you explain what is viewport? Sure, let me explain what is viewport. So viewport is nothing but viewport is nothing but the screen. We are setting the different features of the screen size. So we can use viewport to set that. So we have a meta tag named viewport. So we have a tag, meta tag with the name viewport. There we can specify the content like width equal to device width and the initial scale equal to 1. So we have many attributes like this. As part of content, we can include it in the meta tag with the name viewport. The idea here is if we say initial scale equal to 1 or initial scale equal to 0, so what we can do is, if you want to allow a particular site to zoom or particular site to not zoom, then we can mention all the things here. So how you want to have control over the screen, how you want to control the screen. So you can mention all the things in the viewport meta tag. So it is always good to optimize the mobile browsers. So what we can do is we should actually have viewport meta tag to set the screen width to the device width. So here what we are doing is the screen width can never go beyond the device width. So we are trying to wrap the content to the screen width, that is the device width. So you can set the screen width here. And there is a more like a request from Muralidhar Chandra Babu. He wants to learn responsive design. So he is asking to refer books or online references which helps him to learn from basics. So there is this responsive web design book from Ethan Marketing, who is the founder of responsive design. So it's always good to go start with that book. And there are so many blogs available, and there are so many online materials available which we can make use of to update ourselves in the field. And it's always good to share some of the techniques that you find on web back. So it's like giving back to the society. So, I would definitely suggest the book from Ethan Marketing. It would definitely help you to start from basics. And there is one more question from Bhavani Shankar. At media only screen and max width 481 pixel and min width 481 pixel and max width 767 pixels. Is it fine work with devices having 520 pixels and 640 pixels like all dimensions? Yes. So here what you have mentioned in the question is min width 481 pixel and max width 767 pixels. If you try to load the design in between the mentioned pixels, starting from min width to max width, then definitely it would work fine. In a sense, definitely it will work as per the styles that are mentioned inside this media query. So, definitely what the pixels you have mentioned is 520 pixels and 640 pixels. Definitely this range is between 481 and 767 pixels. So this 520 pixels and 640 pixels would respond according to the styles that are mentioned in the media query. Mentioned between 481 pixels and 767 pixels. And there is one more question. How about using from Vamsi Verma? How about using SVG instead of images, URI or image sprites in terms of page reading performance? Definitely it would help in improving the performance. But the idea here is, if we find that there is no need for image itself, if we find that it's enough with the characteristic, it's a character that can be achieved through HTML characters itself, then we can go with HTML characters. So definitely it will help. Okay. There is one more question from Pavan Kumar Reddy. Is it good to use Bootstrap for mobile app development? Okay. So we have so many themes in market like Foundation, Bootstrap, and many other themes are available. So we can, if you want to quickly develop a responsive design, application, then we can make use of Bootstrap. But whenever you include Bootstrap, we are not going to use the entire set that the Bootstrap is going to offer us. So most of the time, half of the stuff we download from Bootstrap is not being used in the actual project. So it's always good to develop from scratch. It's always good to develop our own responsive fluid grid. But if developers find it a little bit difficult to come up with their own fluid grids, then they can make use of available grids like Bootstrap 3 so these have 24. Bootstrap 3 now has 24 grids, so they can quickly make use of available grids. But the idea, I won't prefer using Bootstrap or any other framework for that matter. The main thing there is we might not use the entire set of features or capabilities the Bootstrap is going to offer us. So we can come up with what we want for our project, and if we feel that we are going to use all the features of Bootstrap framework, then definitely we can go with Bootstrap framework. It's one of the very good frameworks that are available in the market. There's one more question from Ravi Shankar. Using existing CSS like Bootstrap CSS, Metro CSS, etc., do we really achieve the responsive design with a lot of customization, or creating our own CSS with media queries will be helpful? Also, CSS less or SAS, what way it differs? Okay, less or SAS, they are called preprocessors for CSS. So when we make use of less, what we are going to do, we are going to use it as variables. So say for example, we have a color like blue, and we have given it as and we are declaring it as a variable, blue color equal to particular thing. So if we want the theme as blue color, we can set theme color as blue, and we can use the theme color variable across all the divs that we wanted. And later in time, if you want to change the theme from blue to some other color, it's enough if we change this variable alone. So these are some of the features that less or SAS is going to offer us. So they are the preprocessors. So we can make a CSS much more effective by using less around it. So we can convert our CSS files to less files directly, and we can make use of the variables that less is going to offer us, and we can have even arithmetic operations there, like we can have left alignment equal to 20 pixel and right alignment equal to 30 pixel, and we just do left alignment plus right alignment or left alignment minus right alignment. So let's offer so many function features like that. The key difference is CSS is cascading style sheet. Less is a preprocessor for cascading style sheet. Less of SAS is a preprocessor for CSS. I would say that it's always good to come up with our own CSS, because developing from scratch will definitely help, because we are going to make use of exactly what we want. We are going to write code for exactly what we want, and there won't be any extra features that are included in the project just like that without being used. So I would definitely go with developing CSS from scratch instead of going with any of the frameworks that are available in the market. But for quicker development, and if the client feels that they want to deliver the product very soon, then we can make use of available frameworks in the market, and we can optimize it, or we can take it as a improvisation of reducing unwanted stuff from the project. So this is my call, Ravi Shankar. And then please explain something about Bootstrap. That this question is from Abdul Shabab. So developing responsive design, what we are trying to do is we are trying to develop fluid grids. So Bootstrap are nothing but framework which have these grids inbuilt. So we can directly use this grids, like it's enough if we include it as class equal to span 2 or span 4, which will definitely give the fluid grid for us. So Bootstrap offers classes like span 2, span 4, span 6. Now Bootstrap 3 has classes till span 24. So we can readily making use of already existing CSS styles. So this is Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a framework which we can use for developing responsive design. So when we develop our own fluid grid from scratch, then it might take some time initially, but definitely it will have a better effect as the project goes on, because we'll be having only things what we want for the particular project. But definitely we can use Bootstrap if we feel that we are finding it very difficult to come up with our own fluid grids. So that is about Bootstrap, Abdul Shabaz. So that covers all the questions, most of the questions from the askers. So if there are any further questions, I'll add my answer in the link itself. Please visit the link for finding your answers.
Thank you, Karpagam. Thanks for the insightful presentation. I'm really thankful to our guest speaker, Karpagam Balasubramaniam, for conducting this webinar today. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for the support in making this webinar a huge success. The recording of this webinar will be available on techgig.com very soon. Thank you everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Deepika.